Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a recommendation style video, particularly focusing on books to get you excited again about reading. I feel like one of the #1 questions I get via DM, via comment is, I am having a hard time getting into reading. What is a good book to pick up? So today I have compiled recommendations to do just that. They come from a huge variety of genres. They're all very short. They're all very gripping and entertaining, and I think are perfect books to pick up to get you back into the reading spirit. Before I dive into the books themselves, first a word from this video sponsor, which is Bookfinity. I'm so excited to be partnering up with Bookfinity today because, as I'm sure many of you can relate, especially if you're watching this video, and that is one of the hardest things for me to decide is what in the world am I going to read next. I peruse my entire TBR. I'm constantly watching so many videos. So many books sound amazing, so narrowing it down can be so difficult, which is actually where Bookfinity comes in. It is a website for readers by readers, and by taking their short but very comprehensive online quiz, they're able to narrow down your own reader profile. I've taken the quiz myself, and honestly, it was so accurate. It was really able to pinpoint not only what my favorite genres are, but I also really appreciated that it takes into consideration things like how many books do you read a year? What does your lifestyle look like? What's your timetable look like? So it's really able to cater the perfect read for you. And of course, what's super cool is once you start getting recommendations, you're able to track and save them. They also have a very unique rating system, which is actually based on mood. So you're able to share if it made you happy, sad, ecstatic, nervous, curious, all different types of moods, which for me is my favorite part of the site because I am so much of a mood reader, so being able to sort by different types of moods is key for me. If you guys are interested in learning more and also taking the Bookfinity quiz yourself, I'll have a link down below for you guys to check out the website. But again, big shout out to them for sponsoring this video. But let's go ahead and jump into the recommendations. Again, I really try to pick books from a large swath of genres, but I think naturally I do have more fantasy than anything else, so just a bit of a heads up. But the first book I'm going to recommend is honestly a go-to recommendation, especially for people who don't read too many books a year. One, it has an adaptation that I'm personally looking forward to checking out, but it's emotional, it's really character-led, community-focused, and it's not very long at all, and that is A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. Fredrik Backman in general is a fantastic author to check out if you're looking to get back into reading. His stories are engrossing, funny, but also have so much emotion. And this story, we follow our main character Ove, a incredibly grumpy stickler for rules that you inevitably fall in love with, and he is struggling quite a bit emotionally. His wife has passed away, and due to this, he's retreated even further into himself. A man who has always been a bit grumpy, a man who has always been a bit straightforward with his feelings and why he dislikes you, a man who will point out if your lawn is not cut in an even way. This particular life event has obviously impacted Ove very deeply. At the beginning of the story, though, a new family moves in across the street from Ove. They have kids, they are loud, they're messy, and they're constantly bothering Ove for help. And you slowly see Ove come out of his shell once again, become more involved in the community, and you also begin to kind of break through the exterior of Ove himself, begin to understand kind of who and what he is, why he acts the way he does, but also see a slow change and see a man who kind of gets a second lease on life. This book is so emotional. It has so many characters to fall in love with, a really dynamic main character, one that's so charming. I sobbed reading this book. I think it's a great book to pick up, especially if you're looking for something more emotional, but also heartwarming and uplifting. I loved this book so much. A bit of a twist, the next book I'm going to recommend is kind of a fantasy thriller option, another shorter read, but one that is super gripping, and because of the thriller element, really gets you flipping the pages, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This is one of the first adult fantasy books I ever read way back in the day, and I remember it just absolutely blowing my mind. It was such a great introductory novel to the genre itself, which I always struggled with being a bit intimidated by, but this book was entertaining, fast-paced, and I honestly read it in less than 24 hours. Vicious is honestly a masterful tale of jealousy and ambitious, and basically two college rivals turned villains now trying to kill each other and see who reigns supreme. And those two characters are Victor and Eli. And what's so fascinating about this story is that our hero is a villain himself. So there's lots of gray morality. There's lots of unpredictability in terms of how characters are going to act. It's also steeped with academia, as well as flashbacks following Victor and Eli as they are roommates and following their journey from roommates to rivals to villains trying to kill each other. When I say villains, I do in fact mean supervillains, because part of their journey to their rivalry was both individuals trying to find out how to receive powers themselves, and they were both successful and very unique in different ways. The story itself opens on Victor just being released from prison and kind of starting out on this journey once again to try to destroy Eli. You also watch Victor kind of surround himself with a small crew. It very much feels like a gritty comic book story come to life in novel form. It's dark, it's brooding, it's very intense, and the gray morality really being at the center of this book will just keep you flipping the pages. There's also a sequel. It's one of my favorite duologies out there. It is so entertaining. The next book I have to recommend is a more slice of life literary fiction option, and that is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is a multi-POV story set in modern day Seoul. Specifically, we're following a group of young women who live or live around each other all in the same building, breaking down and discussing topics such as beauty standards, plastic surgery, sexism, that's all impacting these girls' lives in different ways. You're really shifting from so many different perspectives and kind of jumping forward and back in time, but it's so masterfully done in my opinion, in that you quickly fall not just into these girls' lives, but you also really begin to understand their motivations, what makes them tick, and why they're making the decisions they're making, even if you disagree with them. This is very much a coming of age story, but it definitely does have a darker tone to it. It's difficult to read at times, but also incredibly emotional, and by the end of it, you are just so in love with all of these girls and wishing them all the best and their future endeavors, and hoping that not just that they'll make better decisions, but perhaps the world and society will be a bit kinder to them. Each girl is so dynamic. Each of them has their own unique path. Seeing again how these different aspects of society touches them differently based on those circumstances is really profound. I loved this book. If you really love coming of age, slice of life stories, this could be a fantastic book to pick up. It's super short. It's less than 300 pages long. And because you're shifting from so many different points of view, it reads so quickly. Next book I have to recommend is a romance story full of a touch of magic and lots of melodrama, and that is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is a very recent read for me, and another one I read in less than 24 hours. It's not long at all, but wow, is it gripping. I fell in love with this book. If you love like Pride and Prejudice, if you love propriety and society and seeing characters kind of navigate within that world, this is such a good book to pick up because it has all the fantastic dialogue. It has such a lovable main character and so much drama. I am not kidding on the drama. But this follows our main character, Nina, and she's just about to debut into society, and she dreams of joining the ranks of these individuals called the Beautiful Ones, which are like the highest ranking socialites, if you will. But Nina is kind of off to a rough start. She has telekinetic powers, often lands her in the center of gossip. She also was raised in the countryside, so many people view her as less refined. But at the beginning of the story, she meets a very handsome entertainer named Hector, and she quickly not only falls in love with him, but also becomes his pupil, and he's able to teach her a lot about her powers, as he is a telekinetic individual himself. But the drama of the story quickly spikes up from there because Nina is actually staying with her cousin-in-law Valerie, and Valerie and Hector actually have a very complicated past spanning over 10 years time. And Hector is still very much in love with Valerie and is kind of courting Nina in a way to get closer to her. This book has tension literally from page one. The dash of magic is just so successful and such a fun twist to an otherwise kind of society-forward book, but it has all the delights of a propriety-centered story. You have the start of the season, you have the balls, you have the silly little walks that everyone has to go on, you have city settings, you have countryside settings, and on top of it all, you have so much angst and feeling and romance. It just sweeps you away. It's dazzling. I loved the time period. I loved Nina, and I loved the romance in this as well. I thought it was super well developed. If you love romance, I highly recommend checking this book out. Next up is another heartwarming option that does have a dash of fantasy to it as well, and that is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. TJ Klune tends to be a go-to author, and I honestly would recommend either of his books. They're both really fast reads, really heartwarming, and they will truly put a smile on your face. This story particularly centers death, so I do want to give a trigger warning for grief and mourning. But this story is set in Charon's Crossing, where the tea is hot, the scones are fresh, and the dead are just passing through. And the owner of this tea shop is named Wallace, and he basically acts as a shepherd to help prepare recently deceased souls to accept the next chapter of their life, which is the afterlife. And at the beginning of this book, we open on our other main character, Wallace, and he is sitting at his own funeral, and he's beginning to realize that he very much, in fact, might be dead. Wallace, at the end of his life, did not have many friends. He was very focused at work, and overall, he was a really grumpy, ill-mannered individual. And when he enters Hugo's tea shop, let's just say he is not the kindest ghost to be around. But slowly over time, you begin to see Wallace not only settle into his new existence at this tea shop, but also begin to reflect on different aspects of his life, growing as a person, coming to terms with aspects of himself as well. You also see him form relationships with everyone in the tea shop, Hugo to an adorable dog that lives on the premise. This book is about healing, about family, it's about moving on, it's haunting, it's charming, it's also hilarious. This book will make you laugh, it'll make you cry, and I feel like it's a really great read, especially if you're wanting something, again, that is a bit more heartwarming and endearing. The next book I have to recommend is if you're looking for a YA story that's really gonna knock you off your feet. I feel like recently I've been more disappointed with the YA books I've been picking up, but this particular read absolutely delivered in every way, shape, and form. And that is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This book is a high-octane adventure from page one. It's truly just so gripping, from the magic to the main character to the storyline. It's so good. But this follows our main character, Bree, and after the tragic and very sudden passing of her mother, Bree is looking to kind of start fresh and also leave her home behind. She wants to escape her grief. She wants to escape the pain that she can see in her father's eyes. Jumps at the chance to enroll in a prestigious high school program that takes place on the UNC campus. But the first night that she arrives, she sees something that she truly cannot believe, and that is a monster, and then subsequently someone fighting this monster. It shortly reveals to her that there is a secret society on the campus of UNC dedicated to fighting these monsters that plague the world, and also that the UNC campus sits on kind of a ley line of magic itself. From here, we watch Bree as she takes place in this magical competition to try to join this secret society, because she's beginning to realize that her mother's death might not be as simple as it seems and might be connected to this magic after all. This book is so gripping, just from the overall plot, but also how dynamic and fresh the story takes so many different known tropes. I loved Bree as a main character. I loved all of the side characters. I loved the romantic plot line. It was so much about family and legacy, and watching Bree not only discover her own power, but also reckoning with her family and her ancestors' power as well, was amazing. I flew through this. It absolutely blew my mind, and is for sure one of the best YA fantasy books I have read, I can safely say, in years. Next book I have to recommend is another shorter read, and that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I loved this book so much, I've read it multiple times, and even my partner, who does not read very much, maybe about a few books a year, read this book in a single weekend. So I can really say, once you start this, this will for sure hook you. But this has also been recently adapted into a television show, which is fantastic, and it's a multi-POV tale, kind of bringing together disparate storylines in such a fascinating way, which is kind of this author's signature. But Station 11 basically has two primary timelines: the before and the after. Before is essentially set during a pandemic where the entire society is on the brink of collapse. In fact, it does collapse. Almost the entire population dies off, and the chaos and the fight for survival is very much centered in this. In the early chapters of the Before, we follow a group of characters kind of going about their daily lives, kind of randomly being brought together in some way, and also focusing on the survival in the very early days of this event. We fast forward to the second timeline, which is about a decade or so later, and from here we follow a traveling Shakespearean troupe, which travels kind of a route through Canada and the United States, performing different Shakespearean plays. This book is about survival, it's about humanity, it's about human connection, it's also about the pervasiveness of art. What survives when everything else is lost? This is a story that kind of examines it. Again, because you're shifting from so many different points of view, it's impossible to put down, because part of it is just trying to piece together why you're being told these different stories and trying to see how in the end everything is connected. It's beautifully written. I love kind of the heart of the story so much. So if you're looking for a more literary fiction leaning book, this is a fantastic one to pick up. And the very last book I'm gonna recommend is another thriller, mystery, whodunit style story. I feel like mysteries are great stories if you are wanting to read something quick or something that's gonna grab you immediately. So fantastic if you don't read very often and you want something that's going to immediately capture your attention. And that is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is such a fun YA mystery trilogy. This trilogy just absolutely landed for me. I loved the vibes, I loved the characters, I found it both so fun but also so dark and gripping. But this takes place at a very famous academy called Ellingham Academy, and it's set in a very remote location in Vermont. Founder of this academy was actually a very wealthy tycoon, but shortly after the opening of the school itself, his daughter and his wife went missing, and while he provided a very lucrative reward, the answer to what happened to them has never been solved. Fast forward to present day, we follow our main character Stevie, who's just gotten accepted into this academy, and she dreams of becoming an FBI detective. And in fact, her thesis while at this school is going to be trying to solve this very old and very famous mystery. But things begin to get weird when she dives deeper into this case and is starting to realize that there is a bit of mirroring between the present and the past. This book actually jumps between present day and the 1930s when this crime initially occurred. It's so gripping and the clues are all there, but trying to kind of piece everything together will just keep you turning the pages. I loved following Stevie. I loved following her mind as she was working through all of these different problems. Again, this is a trilogy, so each book ends in an explosive cliffhanger, and it's so exciting just to see what in the world is going to happen next. And I will say, as someone who struggles with things that are too scary, I feel like this book balances getting your heart racing, making you a little uncomfortable, but it's by no means going to give you like nightmares at night. I love this series so much. It really kept me guessing, and I can confidently say I did not see the ending coming. Alrighty guys, those are 8 books that I think are fantastic pickups to get you back into reading. Again, big shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Bookfinity. I will have their website linked again down below. But thank you again for watching this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!